All right, welcome back to the Farmers RECC Powering the Good podcast. My name is Caroline Pennington. I am Director of Member and Public Communications at Farmers RECC. This month we're discussing a topic that has gained a lot of traction recently here locally in our community, data centers. But first we're going to start this podcast like we do every episode with a safety moment, so we'll be right back.
Summer storms can roll in quickly, and sometimes they can bring power outages with them. A little preparation now can keep your home safer and your family more comfortable when the lights go out. Start by making sure you have a safe source of light nearby, like a flashlight. Keep fresh, fully charged batteries on hand and take a moment each month to check that everything is working properly. It's also a good idea to keep a few flashlights in different areas of your home. Place them somewhere easy to reach and make sure everyone in the household knows where they are. If an outage does happen, stay calm. Your local electric cooperative is prepared, and crews will work as safely and quickly as possible to restore power.
All right, welcome back. So we're joined today with Joe Settles with East Kentucky Power Cooperative. So Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Director of the Member Services Group at EKPC, and with Member Services, we're responsible for all the internal and external communications for the organization. So myself, been with the co-op for 20 plus years, and lots of opportunities within the co-op. So done a lot of different things within different business units. Just glad to be here today with you all.
Absolutely. And so for people that may not understand the relationship, can you explain a little bit about what East Kentucky Power Cooperative is and what that relationship is to Farmers RECC?
Sure. So EKPC, we are a cooperative of cooperatives. So we were formed by co-ops. We are the wholesale power provider for distribution cooperatives within the state. Currently, we have 16 owner members that own us, one of which is Farmers RECC, and we generate and transmit the wholesale power to Farmers RECC when you all distribute it to your end-use members. We have EKPC covers portions of 89 counties. We have about 565,000 meters, represents about 1.2 million Kentuckians that we serve, and we have less than 3,000 miles of transmission line. We have power plants in two coal-fired plants. One's in Maysville, Kentucky. The other is in Pulaski County, Burnside, Kentucky, Cooper Station. We also have some natural gas-fired facilities, one in LaGrange, one in near Winchester and Trapp, Kentucky. And then we have other facilities that we utilize to make power. We have landfill gas units that make power from burning from landfills, from the methane that's created from composted trash. Glasgow is one we have right here. So, yep, very, very familiar with that facility. So we have a variety of different ways that we generate power and provide it to our end-use members. Like I said, Farmers is one of those.
Absolutely. So data centers have been really popular subject matter in our state and in our region lately. So can you explain a little bit about what data centers are and what they do?
Well, data centers are everywhere. I mean, your phone in many aspects is a data center. It takes in data, it creates data, it processes it, it churns out information for you. You ask it questions, it provides information back, and it is communicating through the internet with different servers out there. And so, even businesses within their own structures have their data centers, their server rooms that have their air conditioned, climate controlled facilities. And so those are small scale data centers. What's kind of gotten in the news now are these larger facilities that we call them hyperscalers. These are entities like the Googles, the Amazons, the Meta, all of those types of large information data processing organizations, social media companies, and those folks who are taking in data and processing it. They are creating larger and larger systems because we are using data much more on a daily basis. You think about just with your phone today, you've probably done banking transactions, you're taking photos, they get stored up in the cloud, you're going and making phone calls, and those are done digitally now. And so that data all gets processed, gets captured. And so those facilities are being constructed to manage all the data that is being created and handled and stored. And so that's what a data center is, just the same type of server facility you might have in your business. It's just from a much larger scale.
Okay. So we're just using data centers almost every day, all the time. If you have a smartphone.
Yes, and nearly everything that we do. Again, coming here today, I know how to get to Farmers RECC,
Right.
but I put the directions in on my phone, and it tracks and knows exactly where I am in the world.
Right.
But that is going out to a data center and connecting with a group of servers and providing information back to me in real time on how we communicate. And the interesting thing about data centers is, from an electricity standpoint, Farmers RECC, you're serving your members here locally. But from a data center, it operates globally. So it may be processing information from across the world. And and they run all of the time. And so one of the things that's for us, when we talk about data centers from an energy standpoint, one of the things that we did early on when this topic started, really getting hot and heavy a couple of years ago, was try to distinguish between our membership. So protect our membership if we have to add a data center. And so we created a customer class for data centers. So just like we have customer classes now, or member classes, residential and farm services, you have small businesses, you have large businesses, and they all have different rate structures based upon how they use electricity. We created an energy rate class for data centers similarly. So to be considered a data center under our rate structure, you need to use 15 megawatts of power required. That's just demand, the amount of power that you might need at a given moment. That's 15 megawatts. And think about megawatts in terms of a Walmart's about a megawatt, typical load. So think about 15 Walmarts. That would be the base floor for a data center. And then they use that power 60% of the time. So they use large amounts of power and they use it on a high percentage basis.
All right, that makes sense. So why are data centers maybe looking to build in rural Kentucky? Why are these areas interesting to data centers?
Well, Kentucky is interesting to not only data centers, but most manufacturers and lots of economic development folks for the same reason. One, we have land available in lots of areas. We have lots of industrial facilities that are available. We also have large tracts of lands that may be suitable for development. We have access to water, which a lot of data centers need. But the big driver is, we have very competitive electric rates. Kentucky's energy policy has been very good for the state of Kentucky. From an electric rate standpoint, we typically have some of the lowest rates east of the Mississippi. So if we don't have the lowest rates, we're either one of the lowest or the lowest states east of Mississippi. So we have very competitive electric rates. So that's attractive to them. Since they're large energy users, the more competitive rates that you have, the more attractive you would be to a large energy user.
Sure. So one of the biggest concerns with data centers is power generation and distribution, obviously. So how does East Kentucky power large loads like data centers?
Well, first, let's take a step back. One of the things that we've done to make sure that we protect our membership is that we created a data center tariff. And people hear the word tariff and they think about, buying items overseas and, all of the rates and the taxes that you hear around tariffs. But a tariff, when you're talking about it from a regulated utility standpoint, is just the structure in which we charge our members. And so we'll just call that our rate schedule. But we saw data centers growing interest in the state about a couple of years ago. And so we started to develop that rate class. And so that data center tariff was developed and requires that these members, if they are of certain size, they have dedicated energy resources. That way that they're not just coming onto the system and hoping that power is there. So if they're 250 megawatts or more in size, they have to have a resource dedicated to them under that tariff or they can't connect to that system. So that's one way that we make sure we maintain reliability. Second, we have access to PJM. PJM is a regional transmission organization, an RTO, and PJM is the largest RTO, and they serve 13 states in the District of Columbia, and access to that transmission system also provides an opportunity to provide reliable power. So we have access to PJM. Members of a certain size are required to bring a dedicated resource, and under this tariff, if a data center is interested in connecting to the system, there's lots of studies that have to be done, a lot of research to make sure that any infrastructure that's added is added of the appropriate size. And so if you apply to us to connect the data center to the system, there's a $250,000 admin fee that they have to pay for those studies, to make sure that all of the equipment that ends up being needed that they would have to pay for to connect to the system is appropriately sized, to make sure that we maintain reliability as well.
So it sounds like the goal here was, one, to protect existing members.
Yes.
And then two, for any costs that may be incurred to serve any of the data center loads would be borne by the data center, is what it sounds like. Is that accurate?
That is completely accurate. So that tariff is structured to protect the membership. That was goal number one from the very beginning. And there's a couple of things to remember out of that. Number one, we are obligated to serve.
Absolutely.
And so we have a legal obligation to serve any member that wants to connect to the system. But with that, that's why we constructed the tariff, is that we also have an obligation, if they want to connect to the system, that they don't hurt the other members.
Right.
And so one, again, protect the membership. Two, we do see that there are benefits to data centers. When you add any economic development to your system, it spreads out fixed costs. It can help stabilize rates. And so we see there may be some benefits from the additional dollars that are gained from adding additional members, just like we would any other economic development prospect. And then the tariff itself, it is solely designed to push all the risks and costs back on the data center for connection. So we designed it so that they are carrying the risk and they are carrying the burden. And one of those burdens, one of the concerns might be, this is a very large member. They have to prepay their bill so that we don't get stuck with a large power bill that they walk out the door and don't pay their bill. They are required to bring a prepayment of service. And so that protects our members so that they're not stuck with a large debt from serving one of these data centers.
Absolutely. And definitely want to note here as well that you're talking about tariffs and getting those approved and things. Both East Kentucky Power Cooperative and Farmers RECC obviously we're talking about regulated utilities. All of those rates do have to be approved by the Kentucky Public Service Commission. We both are regulated utilities. So definitely want to make note of that as well. So we hear lots of concerns from folks who are worried that data centers are going to drive up electric rates for everybody. So we've been talking about the Data Center Power Tariff and how it kind of protects members from that possibility. So you've talked a little bit about that. Is there anything else that you would like to add as far as how it protects existing members and member classes?
Well, again, first, before any of them can connect to the system, they have to pay for the studies to make sure that all of the equipment that's needed to connect them is appropriately sized, make sure we're maintaining reliability. Secondly, they're paying for all of those additional infrastructure costs. So they're required to make sure all the transmission and generation needs are covered if they're going to connect to the system. Third, as an additional member, they will provide additional revenues for the members, and so we believe they can help stabilize rates in the long term because they'll have extra dollars that are flowing into the co-op to serve them as a member. And then again, lastly, as you mentioned, there will be a 3-way contract with a data center, with Farmers RECC and East Kentucky Power if one decides to connect to the system. And at this time, we do not have any contracts on any part of our system. We have several data centers that have looked at it. We have several that are going through the process of evaluating what kind of infrastructure would be needed. But if we do get to the point where we sign a contract, as you said before, that will go to the Kentucky Public Service Commission for review. And so the Kentucky Public Service Commission will have a public oversight to make sure that the contract itself meets the guidelines of the tariff and protects the membership.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about it before about how East Kentucky Power generates power currently. Mm-hmm. So obviously as electricity demand increases, whether that's to serve data centers or residential members and other classes. So how is East Kentucky planning to meet growing energy demand going forward into the future?
No, that's a great question. So we have just a little under 3,500 megawatts of steel on the ground is what we call it. That generating resources that can make power. We had a winter peak of 3,744 megawatts back with Winter Storm Fern. I think it was in 2024. And so with that, we recognize we're going to need additional generation resources. And so we have put a plan in place, and we have several projects that are currently underway that are being constructed. One, we have a 745 megawatt combined cycle unit that's going to be constructed at Cooper Station in Birdside, Kentucky. We had our groundbreaking last month in May for Liberty Station. That is a 214 megawatt facility, natural gas fired facility near Liberty, Kentucky in Casey County. We're very excited about that facility. We also, we are co-firing our coal facilities with natural gas to make sure that we can keep those facilities available in the long term. So environmental regulations require that we have an alternative to coal. And so the way we're doing that is we're co-firing those units with natural gas, and so they can operate either on natural gas or on coal. And then we're also building renewable resources. We have solar facilities that are under construction in Fayette and Marion counties. That's 136 megawatts of renewable power that's being constructed as well. So we have a plan in place to make sure that we meet the energy needs, and that's the energy needs of our existing membership. Those resources are being built to serve the existing membership. They're not being built to serve data centers. Those are resources we need on the ground today to make sure that we have the power available when we need it in the future.
Absolutely. Awesome. This episode is a little different. We did ask our members and reach out to our members and ask them what questions that they had about data centers. And we did get a few responses, so we wanted to ask you a couple of those. This question is from Eric Snyder. Since the ownership structure is member ownership, say Farmers RECC's average load is 53 megawatts to serve 25,000 accounts. If one new account comes along and requires 600 megawatts, do they essentially own Farmers RECC? So I'll take the first part of this question if I can, because this is one of my favorite questions to answer. In short, Eric, the answer to your question is no, that larger customer or larger member does not own Farmers RECC. One of the cooperative principles is one member, one vote. So your vote as a residential member is just as important to us as that one vote for that 600 megawatt member that may be joining our membership. So that's one of our cooperative principles. But Joe, by all means, please add to that.
No, I was going to say the same thing. We're democratically controlled. And so that member would have no larger voice than the other members. And also with that, I come back to our data center tariff. It's structured to protect our existing membership. So if that data center leaves, like I said earlier, they prepaid their dollars. If they leave the system, then they're gone from the system. And that infrastructure that they paid for to be there is still there that serve our existing membership.
Sure. Did have a question about maybe the difference in data centers and maybe fusion centers. So could you maybe explain the difference in data centers and fusion centers for us?
I had not paid much attention to what a fusion center was.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So I went out there and looked it up. But really what I saw from that, and if you saw something differently, let me know. But to me, a fusion center is a data center, but it's owned by the government to support communications between law enforcement, emergency response folks, between the state and those emergency personnel. So it is a government dedicated data center, as you will, as opposed to the data centers that we talk about right now. There's just publicly traded entities that are providing a commercial service for people to use data.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's kind of what I read too.
So that's where I'm. The Department of Homeland Security controls fusion centers.
Right.
And,
we're not in that business.
We're not in that business. So that's a great question.
Absolutely. I always like it when we can learn things too. Mm-hmm. So, this question was from Lori. How can you guarantee that the extra infrastructure structure costs needed for the data center will not be passed on to the consumer? What happens when the data center says they can't pay the additional costs like they're fighting in Wisconsin?
So first, again, the data center tariff was constructed for that very reason. Number one, protect the membership. And so, again, to make sure that we have serious inquiries and that we're not dealing with just speculators and those types of things. We have some requirements for them to trigger off the studies, and one of which, again, they have to pay an upfront fee to participate. We believe that leads to folks that are seriously interested in connecting to the system to be the ones that we're working with. And then we conduct studies, using those dollars that they pay to just make sure that we have the appropriate infrastructure that would be added. And then as that infrastructure is identified, all of those costs to add that infrastructure are borne by the data center.
Absolutely.
And so the membership is not paying to add that additional infrastructure. And with the Wisconsin comment, what I see from that is, Wisconsin in some respects is much like Kentucky, being very restrictive and pushing the risk and the cost to the data centers. And so if they don't wish to participate under that structure, then they may go look somewhere else. But we've decided as an entity that we're not going to push that risk and those costs to the existing membership. And so if the data centers don't want to participate under that structure, then they won't come here.
Absolutely. All right. Well, those were the only questions that we had for members. Is there anything else that we did not ask that you would like to add?
I think we've covered it pretty well. I think one of the things that we've really been trying to focus on is factual information. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and data centers, whether you like them or not, they're vital to everyday life at this point. So we see some benefits from having that, even from a national security perspective. Being able to compete on that stage is very important. And then, we see there can be benefits to the communities. We see data centers just like an economic development project, whether it was a large car manufacturer, or whether it's somebody that's making auto parts, or whether it's somebody that's fabricating metals, or whatever that is. We see that additional infrastructure as an opportunity for communities to grow and to improve. It brings additional tax revenue. It brings jobs. It brings opportunities for people to stay within their communities. So we just see it that we recognize there's a lot of fear out there associated with these types of facilities, but we also see there's benefits. And what we've really tried to do is push the risk of adding one of these facilities to the system back on the data center.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. If any members have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us at communications@farmersrecc.net. And with that, we'll close for this episode, but please feel free to join us next month for our next episode of Powering the Good podcast. Oh, I almost forgot, Joe. At the end of every episode, we always ask our interviewees, who or what powers you?
Oh, gosh. My family powers me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they're a lot of fun. They're my wife, the 3 kids. They're our joy. So and I call them kids. They're 24, 20, and 19. So it's much different.
Always your kids.
Yeah, but they're always our kids. So yeah, our family is what powers us.
Absolutely. And as a co-op, our members are always what powers us and keeps us going and striving for the best for our communities. So with that, we'll wrap up for this episode. But like I said, be sure to join us next month for our next episode of Power the Good podcast. See you later.